Welcome. So today we're going to take a look at a new product which we're very excited to launch, and that is our new Permabond. We've been working on this with the manufacturer in the UK, so it's UK based, UK made. It's a contact cement, contact adhesive, so useful for different leather types. So we're going to have a little look. I'm going to show you some demonstrations of it, and while I'm at it, I'm just going to talk about a few considerations when you're gluing your leather. So the Permabond is a high strength bond glue. It's a contact glue, so you use it like any other glue. You're going to spread it on thin, make sure it's thin and even on both sides. When it's tacky, press them together, a little bit of a tap, and let it cure. So it will be kind of bonded after about 20 to 30 minutes, depending on your atmospheric conditions. But for full curing, as with any contact cement, if you fully go to the small print, you should let it cure for 24 hours to get the full bond. So I've done some testing on these, and I've been testing in different conditions. So these are some of the snippets I've taken off my samples from testing. So I've tested it from lambskin to lambskin, so it's got really good flex. There's no stiffness or kind of anything like that. If I tried to peel that back, which I have, I've very unsuccessful, so it's got a really good adhesion, really good bond. I've done pig suede to veg tan, so that's given a really good bond. Now that's useful to know if you're trying to put a lining on anything, then that's a good test as well. Quite often we have people who use the pig suede as linings. I've done veg tan to veg tan. Again, a common usage is like in knife sheaths. We're going to do one of those a bit in a moment when you want to glue the welt in. So I've done different types as well, because it's quite important to consider the types of leather. So as well as this review, I'm going to do a few little tips on things to consider when you're gluing. So I've had really good success with these, and the other thing I wanted to do was, we get asked quite a lot when things are water based, are they waterproof? And the answer is most definitely yes. So whenever you're thinking about whether it's a dye or a stain, or in this case a glue, and it's water based, this is the medium that whatever your substance is held in, if you like, in order for it to adhere to. So if you're using a dye or a stain or the glue, once everything's evaporated out, you're left with whatever that medium is. And so whether the evaporation is from a solvent or a water, that's where the difference lies, if you like. And that's why they're better for the environment and better for you for breathing in. Obviously with glues, it's something to really consider. So I also did, bearing in mind I would get asked on that, I did a test on it where I tried to peel back the glue that I'd done on the leather to leather. I cut some bigger pieces, cut them in half. I then wet them, soaked them, and then tried to peel the glue back, and I wasn't able to. This one I did twice, so this is a little piece of the one that was left. So this was wetted and then dried, and then tried to see if I could get that back, and I got really good adhesion with that. But do your own tests. Take some little snippets, leathers that you typically use, make your own little decisions as to whether, how it works for you. So we'll take a little look at how it performs when it comes out of the bottle. I've got some of it in the dish here, and you'll see that it's a lot thicker than the other contact cements that we've got on the site. Now, initially I thought, oh, well, maybe that will impede its spreading, but we'll do a little look on some now. So I've got some firm calf, and I want to put a facing onto, this is going to be a little knife pouch, a little pouch bag, like so. So I want to have this reinforced, so I'm going to put some glue onto this side. I've drawn it on so that I'm not wasting the glue, and it's going on really nicely. Now, one thing to bear in mind when you're gluing, I said I'd go through some considerations as we're doing it. When you get to the edges, I love using these glue spreaders because they just go on and give you a really nice even, and you can spread out and make sure you've not got anything too thick and heavy. And just there, I've gone over. I'm going to immediately wipe that away. What I don't want is any contamination going across to the front of the leather, so really be aware of that with your working space. So I'm just taking the spreader and working from the edges inwards. So what you don't want with glues is when you press them together, you don't want anything squirting out at the sides of the edges that would then impede your edge finishing. This is a firm calf. It's a double tanned leather, so it's been veg tanned but also chrome tanned. So I am going to want to edge finish using our leading edge paints. And I don't want anything to be in my way when I come to do that. So I've just got that one done. You can see under these conditions that it is drying out quite tacky quite quickly. So I'm just going to put my mark on here where I want to go so that I don't go any further. So we'll get that done. So other things you want to consider just while I'm spreading on here, you want to think about the type of leather that you're using. So most new leathers, it's not an issue, but if you're using a waxy or oil tanned, those are things that will impede your adhesion. So you will find that you'll get not such good adhesion when you're using those leathers. The way round it, if it's just a surface, for example, a wax tannage or a bridle tends to be just a surface, and if you're trying to glue onto that surface, you'll need to get rid of that wax layer. So one way you can do that is I tend to just use a cotton bud, but it depends on the size of the area, some deglazer. So deglazer will eat through the wax and it will give you a better surface for you to glue into. But you will also need to key any of the areas. For example, in a moment I'm going to show you on this leather, I'm gluing two pieces together face to face. So one of the sides is going to be smooth and that will need keying, otherwise it's just too smooth for the glue to take. So I've got these two pieces ready now. I'm going to put them down and position them over. I tend to cut, in this instance, my second piece when it's on so that I can get all my edges and my cuts nice and straight. But that's just me in this instance. So I'm pressing it down and I'm going to give it a tap with the hammer. What I want is to get rid of any air bubbles. I want to press anything down, and I'm going to look quickly and just make sure I've got nothing coming out of the edges. You want to go up to your edges but not have anything impeding. Keep a bit of a cloth handy. You want to be able to just, a little damp cloth, just wipe away. Accidents happen. You do sometimes get marks on it. Try and get it off as quickly as possible. Alternatively, you can, if you don't get it off immediately, then just leave it and use a crepe rubber to try and lift it away afterwards, and it should peel off. And what you don't want is to leave anything that you haven't noticed and then you go over and re-dye or add a finish and you end up with a patch. So we'll leave that now to bond off. So that's kind of in place. Now you can see I've slightly gone in, I've got it straight onto here, but it's not on against my line. Now if I was to try and peel that back, it will come off, but it's taking away the tack. Okay, so if I needed to reposition, I can, but I've now lost some of that initial tack. So I would probably just give a little bit of a reapply, particularly, well, just probably to the whole thing, to be honest, because you want, although it wasn't bonded there, you want to get a good bond, and you don't want the fact that you've taken away and let that air back into it to impede it. So I can still got some tack on that side, but that was the last one I did. I think it was the first one. So I'm just going to make sure I actually put it on straight this time. Right, that's better. Okay, and again I'm just going to rub it over, press it down and give it a tap, and then we'll come back to that one a bit later. Yeah, that's so much better. So my next piece I'm going to do is the gusset. This is a little belt pouch bag I'm making out of this firm calf. So I've got it prepared. I need to put these two together. They will have sewing going over, but I need these to sort of bond together. So when I'm joining leathers, I do 2 angles. I've taken off and skived away with my safety beveler tool, and I've also sanded to make it even. So I've now got 2 areas here that I'm going to glue together. So one was on the top smooth surface, so that definitely needed keying, and keying you can do with a bit of sandpaper, with your scratch, or you can create hashing. Obviously in this instance I'm trying to get them thin to glue together. That might not always be the case, but yeah, think about keying and roughing that smooth surface if you have one. So we'll get those on. Now those have gone on a lot quicker because it's only a small area we're doing, so those are just going to get a little bit tacky before I put them together. So I'm going to move on to some veg tan. So a classic thing that people use for gluing is for knife sheaths. This is a knife sheath I'm preparing, and I need to put the welt into place. So I need to stick the welt in. The welt will stop the knife from cutting through the stitches, and it gives a little bit of extra thickness to the sheath to allow the blade and the knife to sit in. So again, I'm going to just go down this edge, and I'm going to make sure I don't get anything over, because again I want to, once this is all complete, I want to be able to, with this veg tan, edge treat it using the slicking method. So I'm just going to work my away from the edge. And I'm working into this flesh side, which is already roughened, so it should give a good take. Just going to lift off a little bit of the excess there. So again, what I don't want is when I press them together for any of that glue to come through to the edge. It will affect my slicking. So that piece is ready. I'm just going to do this back piece here. You can see it's really, actually having this thick consistency is actually really helping me. It's helping me get it put on really nicely and not sort of splashing out or moving around. So actually that is one of the things I actually really like about this adhesive. Okay, so we'll leave those to get tacky and we'll go back to the ones we did here earlier. Again, I'm just going to make sure that my hands are a little clean before I go back and press down from the top area. So I'm going to make sure this time I've got these lined up exactly right. And press down. And for this I'm going to use my bone folder just to really smooth down, really make sure I've got that join even and rubbed in place. That's looking good. I'm going to go from the back as well. Just to make sure I've got everything fully, as it sounds, a contact cement in contact. So there we go, we have that ready, and I can now do that. When I come through to stitch, it's going to overlap those stitches, it's going to actually hold it. So it's belt and braces, gluing and stitching, and that's provided my base gusset, which will go around my case like so. And we'll go back to the veg tan. So I'm going to again work to position this. It's better to get it right the first time, as you saw. So I'm just pinching that together here because I've only got this thin strip to work off. Now you can see a little mark there. That was where a little bit of the glue was on my fingers. It's on the inside, so I'm not going to worry, but I just want to check this outside. That's looking fine. So normally I would make sure I'd cleaned again before going to the next project. So again, I'm just going to press down and give it a little bit of a hammer. Now I've checked, I've got no glue on the outside here. I've got it just poking up above, so I'm just going to press that into place there. On the inside I have got a little, so I'm just going to use my nail just to smooth that in, just to get that out of the way. Lovely. Now if I wanted to, I tend to, when I'm doing my knife sheaths, this is just how I do them, I will now make my holes either side and then stitch that top bit in place. But you can also stitch them completely, glue them completely together, and then drill your holes through all of those layers. So if you were doing that, this side now is quite smooth, so you will need to make sure that that is scored. So again, you can either use sandpaper or your awl, and if you're using your awl, you're literally just cross hatching, and you can go pretty deep. Like so, and then it's a case of applying the glue again. And I tend to use clamps. I have these little quilting clips which you may have seen on other tutorials I've mentioned. They don't particularly mark the leather. If your leather is still damp from the casing of the fold, you might want to put something to make sure that they don't leave a mark on the leather. But these are what I would probably do to leave it to cure overnight before I do anything else around that. So that is our Permabond glue. You can find it on the website. Goes a really long way, and again, as I say, it's made in the UK, which is a real advantage, I think. And yeah, I've been really pleased with it actually. I think it's a great glue. I've been using it pretty much as my main glue now since I had the sample for testing about a year ago. So yeah, that's what I think of it. Have a go yourself, see what you think.